You know you should have started saving for college when you found out you were pregnant, right? But what I want you guys to know is that it's not too late. There's a plan that doesn't bankrupt your retirement, and our guest today is going to share that with you. So stay tuned, because this episode might just save you $40,000 per kid.
Don't move. Keep it locked. You already know. You're listening to the Forfeit Fatherhood Podcast. And we're having conversations with dope dads covering the 4 pillars of fatherhood. We call it the Fit Fatherhood Formula. Faith, family, finance, and fitness. That's right. These dads are setting the pace in business and fatherhood. This show isn't only about the outside success. We're getting down to who you are. Gentlemen, it's time to get fit. And now, let's get into the show.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Forfeit Fatherhood Podcast, a podcast for fathers by fathers, where we talk about the 4 pillars of fatherhood, which are faith, family, finance, and fitness. And I'm excited for this guest because as I've been talking to you guys have been listening, kind of following along these episodes. I'm starting to get to a point where I'm thinking about my daughters, both of them actually, their future in terms of what happens after school, right? When they graduate from high school. Both my girls want to go to college, and we all know that college costs a little bit. So I've been trying to plan these things out strategically. I'm secretly getting information myself, but I also want to share with you guys. So I have a guest with me today who is going to help us with that. But then we're just going to talk fatherhood like we always do. My guest today is Paul Campo. Paul, how you doing today, brother?
Doing great and excited to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with your story. What kind of Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do and who Paul is.
Yeah, so out of high school, I kind of knew I wanted to be in the financial and business world. So went and got a business degree, graduated early, started with accounting actually, and figured out that was way too boring for me. So switched to finance and management, ended up with an accounting minor anyways, but started off with financial planning right out of college and kind of looked at the different directions that a career could go and thought, okay, I could do corporate finance and sit behind a desk and crunch numbers for a budget for whatever department I'm in and things like that. And I thought, I really want to see the people that I'm helping. I really want to help people. So that's why I went into personal finance and then developed a great niche in college financial planning. And what I found when I first started doing financial planning was everybody in the financial world, and I'll say 99.8% of people out there that work with people's finances, they kind of see their responsibility as to take the money they're given and grow it for retirement, right? And what I found is that people weren't actually helping middle class clients to stay out of debt. They weren't helping middle class clients to pay for things the right way and how to save up for their next car and how to save up for college. So when somebody comes to a traditional financial planner and they say, hey, we need to save for college, they might be able to do a rough calculation of, hey, you should be saving $800 per month per kid to make sure you have enough for later on. But they're not showing you how to actually do that. And none of us have, for you with 2 kids, and you don't have an extra $1,600 a month in the budget that isn't being allocated already, right?
Right.
So that's where, most people, when they start young, they might put a couple $100 a month into a 529 or something like that. But by the time they meet me, usually they have a high school student and we're doing triage financial planning, right? We're trying to figure it out within a couple years, sometimes less than a year. College is now on their mind. So Rod, I love that you're thinking about it a little bit ahead of that, at least, because that's the key to succeeding in this. But what we've been able to do is help families fix their finance and do that on a very quick basis, along with helping the students get into the right school. And that's one of the things that's very unique about our organization, Bridgewise College Planning, is we actually have the certified counselors on the team through the Independent Educational Counselors Association who are meeting with the students to make sure the kids are getting the best counseling, the best advice on what careers, where they should be going to college, what activities should they be doing during high school? What classes should they be taking during high school? How are we going to build that resume so that by the time we do help our families fill in their applications and fill in their financial aid forms and everything else, that we're getting as much financial aid on every side, everywhere we could, to not just get them into the right college, but also get the maximum amount of financial aid possible for each family.
Wow. Okay. You There was a lot there. I'm gonna go back to earlier part. You almost had me like pass out when you were like $800 a month per kid. I was like, oh, I'm definitely doing this wrong. I'm like, is that the number that we need to have? Because we ain't gonna make it. But I'm glad that you kind of there's a method that I think you have that doesn't require me to put away $800 per kid. Thank God. But if I am, but let's say I'm a listener and I'm starting to think about it. What
Mhm.
is like my first step? Like, what is the first thing that I need to do as I'm planning for college for my kid?
Yeah, so there's two different trains on the college planning process. So there's a different first step for each of them. So one of the trains that needs to be happening is discussing with the kids and having yourself or a qualified individual discussing with the kids what that right life path is for them. If we don't have the kid on the right life path, then why go to college, right? So making sure that, we're not going to talk to a 7-year old about, we want to talk to them about it, but they're not going to commit to a career at 7 years old, right? Usually just after puberty is the right time to start those serious conversations. There's things that are changing in their brain that usually around that 12, 13, 14 age get solidified. And we're looking for those things inside the brain that don't change. And we're looking for to match them with a career path that people are still happy with in their 40s and 50s that have similar things going on in their brain and matching those careers up with those students. So usually by the time they're in eighth, ninth grade, that's the time to start solidifying what career path. That's the first step on the college side. On the financial side, it's how are we going to pay for it, right? So the first thing you want to do is either do it yourself or meet with a qualified professional like myself or another. But there's very few that do college planning like we do, but meet with somebody who knows what they're doing. The first step is to write down year by year, semester by semester, how much money you might need. Most people have never done that, but that's the first step of figuring out how much money you actually need to save, how much money you're actually, and then we have to figure out how we're going to pay that, right? And so whether that's for most people, it's savings, it's loans, it's financial aid, it's all these other things. That's the first step, though, is how much money are we actually going to need for a family like yours?
Got you. Got you. Okay, and then so kind of we know where we need to start. We got to figure out what it is that our kid wants to do, and then that'll help us kind of figure out schools and the cost of some of those schools and kind of like where we're looking at going and what we're looking like we're looking at paying. Okay, all right. So I'll use my kid for example. My kids do a bunch of stuff, but my oldest wants to be a psychologist, so she's gonna be in school for a little while. My wife is a therapist. My daughter wants to be like my wife, which is awesome. But my wife has told her that if she really wants to make a lot of money, then stay in school for a few more years and become a psychologist, and you can still do the same thing, but you get paid twice as much. So she's got her mind set on that, but she wants to go to a really good school, right? In her mind, I don't know where it came from. Somewhere told her that Ivy League schools were the best schools to go to. So she wants to go to an Ivy League school. What is both good and hurtful is that she wants to move across the country away from us. Not because she wants to get away from us, but she really likes this idea now that she'll be 13 in 2 weeks, that she's independent, right? So she wants to go and live on the other side of the country so she can be by herself. But I know that's going to come with a bigger price tag. So knowing those kind of two things, what is like now? What do I start doing? I heard you say break down what the cost is per semester or per school year, but then I need to, I'm assuming, assess where I am financially and how I can kind of meet those demands.
Yeah, so and that's part of it's different with every person's financial situation, and as you get into it, you want to consider how it's going to affect your retirement. You want to consider how your debt load is right now, what we can afford on top of that. How do we better use debt? So for most people, they have a mortgage, they have a car payment, maybe they have a home equity line of credit or credit cards or something else going on in their financial life, right? Can we better use debt? So we know if your daughter's going to go to Ivy League, even if you get some financial aid, you're not going to be out of debt in the next 10 years, right? So with that acceptance for a lot of families, we need to be planning on what's the least worst debts we can have and how do we make sure that we're still strong in our financial life so by the end of the 10 years we haven't increased that load to a place that you can't afford. So a lot of families out there, if we're looking at a middle class family, and I know fathers go with a whole range of income, right? But the a middle class family making maybe $150,000 a year between the two of them, if they have, a car payment, they have a house payment, they have taxes, they have insurance, everything else, but just the debt load, if we can get them from 4,500 a month down to 3 grand a month, well, there's an extra $1,500 a month you can save for college before you get there. But that's also less debt you're going to go into while the kids are in college, right? And that's what we look at is what is the actual debt load? How do we get that lower? Is a big part of that financial planning for most middle class families. And the thing, Rod, you know this, you should have started saving for college when you first found out you were pregnant, right?
Yeah.
But what I want you to know is there's other great things that you've been doing with your girls. I mean, I hear it in your podcast episode that are really important things, that are great things that you can't go back and undo them once the time has passed, right? And so it's not that you're like throwing money out the door on things that don't matter. You're doing things that are important. They're just not as urgent as saving for college. And that's why most people come to us with high school students is now that's the next most important thing that they need to make sure happens. And that's where the focus is going to be. That's where the energy is going to be spent. So it's normal to not have the savings that you should have had and everything like that. But yeah, college costs, especially when you're talking Ivy League, even, we have state universities in state that are 40 grand a year now, right? So state universities, 25 to 40 grand a year. If you're in state, out of state, you're at 50 or 60 at most of them. We get into private universities, the elite private universities are all between 85 and $100,000 per year per student, right? So there's no doubt if a student goes to a top tier university like you're talking about, that's a quarter million per kid, right? That you need to come up with in order to make that happen. So what is it's obviously going to have an effect on the parent's net worth. It's going to have effect on the child's net worth. It's going to make sure there's going to be an effect. So what we're trying to figure out is what is the least worst effect, right? And when you use debt, when you use loans, that's what most people end up with. Because Rod, you mentioned financial aid, and absolutely, I believe your daughter is brilliant from everything I heard about her on the podcast. But when we look with the students, the financial aid, hoping for financial aid is not a plan of how the bill's going to get paid, right?
Yeah. Hope is never a good strategy.
Right. And I'm not saying hope's bad. It's good to have hope. And we talk about all of positive mentality and all that kind of stuff as fathers with our kids. But it's not how the bill's going to get paid. Right. So there needs to be financial aid strategies. What college you pick is probably going to be the number one factor in if you get financial aid or not. So picking the right university. So you said Ivy League. There's a number of Ivy League schools out there. There's Ivy League similar schools, right? We can also talk about Duke or Stanford or whatever other Northwestern similar universities. There's probably 50 in that category that she might be considering. Which of those for her academic situation and your family's financial situation is going to be the most generous with financial aid? So there's a number of ways that we have data on that because we've worked with hundreds of families through the process. We buy additional data from the universities and from data providers on who gets what kind of financial aid at which universities, which allows the family as they're designing that school list of where should we even apply to have that financial fit. And that's where the financial fit is probably the one that gets left out the most because when they talk to the high school counselors, and I love high school counselors, but they don't have nearly enough time for the kids, right? So the American Student Counseling Organization says there's 408 students for each one counselor at a school. So obviously they're dealing with class schedules, they're dealing with bullying, they're dealing with social problems in the school. They would love to spend all their time with students who are going off to college, but they have other stuff they have to do too, right? So we need them to find the school that's the right campus fit. If it's not a good culture, if it's not a good environment for them, is it in the middle of nowhere? Is it in a city? Is it how big of a campus? Are they really close with a few people or can they meet thousands of people the next day if they want to, right? What kind of campus culture is there? That's one of them. The next one is curriculum. So we need it to be a fit academically. Do they have the right majors? Are they top of their field in those majors? How do we make sure that's a good fit? Academic fit actually comes from the academic application process. right? So some schools are only taking kids with 4.0s and up because they're harder academically, right? If your kid has a 3.5, you do not want them getting into one of those universities because they're not going to succeed academically there. So that's one of the big things that we want to make sure is we're applying at schools that are a good fit academically. And then the third one that most people leave out is the cost, right? And we love our kids, Rod. When I first started doing college planning, I didn't have kids, right? And I would sit with parents and be like, you want to do what and spend how much money to get your kids into college when there's a cheaper option out there, right? You
Hmm.
know, she can go to a state university for less than half the price. And when I first had my son Luke and I held him in the hospital for the first time, and I went back to work a week or two later, and that's when it really clicked with me. That's what these parents are feeling. Because when I held Luke for the first time, I said, I am going to do everything I can to give this kid an advantage, right?
Right.
I will sacrifice myself. I will sacrifice the things I want to do in life to make sure that he can do the things he wants to do. And now with my daughter Olivia, the same thing, and it's just such a great feeling. But then I went back to work and I'm like, okay, now it makes sense that these people will drop $250,000 on one kid's education and delay their retirement by a number of years because they care that much about their kids. So from a number standpoint, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, right? To send them to the
Yeah.
cheapest college, get the degree, and get off it with life, right? And you can succeed that way if that's the best path for the student. But I really understand how we want to give those advantages. The college atmosphere and different levels of universities are better for different students. We want them making the connections that are going to help them succeed throughout their career. So it's not just the classwork. Most of the classwork, and people who are anti-college will be like, oh, you can get all the classwork online for free. It's the environment, it's the independence. So you talked about your daughter wanting to go off to college and kind of separate from the family a little bit and have that independence. That is an amazing thing because your goal, how old's your oldest?
She'll be 13 in a couple of weeks.
So I don't know if this is your goal, but for most people at your stage, your goal is she's a full independent woman in 10 years, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
she is on her own. And that's a really cool thing that college provides and can provide is a little bit of a safety bubble around her. And she's with similar kids at similar ages, but a little bit of freedom too. And that's a wonderful step for a lot of kids who are trying to enact all the things that you've taught her for so many years, right? And that's a cool thing to see her succeed on her own there. And she'll still call mom and dad and probably have some tough phone calls where you wish you could be there for her and things like that. But it's especially tough on the mothers when the kid goes off to college. That's been a lot of what fathers too, but it seems like more so mothers that have that emotional attachment of that's a lot of their identity and it's a lot of the father's identity as well is raising those kids and that's what a lot of what they've done with their time, right? And all of a sudden that's removed. And that's a crazy feeling. It's a separation, not just for the kids. The kids are excited to do it because they want the independence, right? It's much harder on the parents when that separation happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard it said before that it's interesting that we, or the person that we live for, or we couldn't live without, we're preparing to live without us at some
Right.
point, right? Like our goal is that they get to a point where they don't need us in the way that they need us now, right? Even though that's like what our purpose and our mission, our goal, and all the things that we do are aligned to make sure that they are taken care of now. Ultimately, we want them to not need us for anything.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm listening to you talk here. I just, we were lucky enough to get some good advice when my wife was pregnant with my oldest daughter, and we started a, well, I don't know if it's good advice. If she goes to college, it'll be good advice, right? So we started a 529 plan at
Awesome.
birth, right? And so we have one of those for both of our daughters. And we've been putting money aside every month since they were born. But I understand that not everybody has done that. And like you said, most people come to you when the kid's already in high school, and maybe we're a little behind. What are some of the things that maybe they should start doing, or we should start doing if we are behind, right? If I didn't have any of that stuff set up, I hadn't been planning. We're 13, about to go into eighth grade, or about to go into ninth grade. We got 4 years to try to figure something out before that first, bill comes. What are some of the things that we should be doing right now?
Yeah, so saving money anywhere, I'll start with that, is better than not saving money for something at all, right? So if we need money for an expense in the future, whether it's retirement or buying a house or college, saving money somewhere is better than not. That being said, there's places that are better than others for where you save the money, right? So I get this question pretty often when I do media appearances is where should we be putting money, right, for college? And that's where 529s are awesome. They get some good tax benefits. When we look at financial aid, even an extra $10,000 in savings, depending on where you put it, could end up increasing your college bill between $500 and $2,500 per year. So I'll repeat that again. Just 10,000 extra in savings could increase what you end up paying for college between $500 and $2,500 per year. So for example, the money in a 529 account, you are going to report that in the financial aid formulas when you go to file to try to get financial aid. They know, imagine being the financial aid office at the university, they know they can get all that money, right? So they know that they can charge your family more. And that's where, when we're looking at financial aid, they're not worried about your second kid, right? You're reporting how much you have in the financial accounts. They're making sure, and it's crazy to think about it. And Rod, this, I
I don't
apologize
like it.
for shocking you a little bit here.
I don't like it.
But think of the universities as a very, very successful business, right? They've got their business model down really, really well. And when we look at that business model, think of the financial aid office as the billing arm for the university. They're the ones that decide how much each person pays, right? So going to college, I think you know already, Rod, you're hoping for scholarships. Going to college is like buying an airline ticket where most people pay a different price, right? Some bought it online, some used points, some had first class. They're all going from the same place to the same destination, right? Same thing as college. They're going to be sitting in college. They're in the same classes with the same professor, but you're going to pay a different price than the kids that are sitting next to your student, right? And that's where making sure that we're approaching that with that mindset that we want to be the ones that pay the least amount out of the students that are in that class, or at least as get as much financial aid as your family could qualify for, right?
Hmm.
And that's where, when you say there's certain assets in the financial aid formulas that count against you for financial aid, there's certain ones that you don't have to report at all in the financial aid formulas. And so, for example, most colleges, not all colleges, don't count your home equity against you at all. So if you have a fully paid off house that's worth $500,000, most schools don't even know about that, right? If you have retirement accounts, those don't go into your 401k at work and things like that. Those don't count against you in the financial aid formulas. Roth IRAs don't count, IRAs don't count. Life insurance policies, if you have cash value there, doesn't count against you. So there's a number of different places where we can place money that doesn't count against you in the financial aid formulas. So then the next question is, of those places, so that's just one criteria though, right? Because financial aid is not the only thing that matters. So we need to look at how it's going to grow, how the investment performance is. And that's where most of the time when we analyze the 529 plans that our clients are using, the investment selection, you're kind of limited which investments you can choose. And it's very rare that we find one that's an above average or above the benchmark kind of fund, right? So most of the time, for the risk you're taking in those investments, you're not getting the performance you should. So without going full financial nerd and going into the whole analysis with you here, Rod, the risk is too high and the returns are too low compared to other investment choices out there. But we want liquidity from the money too, right? And that's one of the biggest drawbacks to 520s is if you needed money to buy a car so we can stay out of debt, or you needed a roof, or you had an emergency where you're max out of pocket on your health insurance 2 years in a row, or so whatever the thing is you need money for, you can't access that 529 for anything else without a bunch of taxes and penalties, which means it's pretty well locked up there. And
Yeah.
that drives a lot of families into debt in their personal life, which means they can't then save enough money to pay for college, right? And that's where it's just that revolving circle. So those are the kind of characteristics we tend to be looking for is um, how does it affect financial aid? How liquid is it for things that we need it for? And then the investment performance, or how much guaranteed growth there is in it, or how does the investment part of it work. And then when you get closer and closer to college, not having it drop in value gets more and more important, right? When they were 3 years old and you have 15 years left to invest the money, you can ride the market down and ride the market back up, right? When you're there in high school, you don't have the time to ride the market down and back up, right? So if you're in the 529, then you go to the fixed fund, which most of the fixed funds in the 529 aren't keeping up with what it should be if you went into the open market. So yeah, there's a lot too where to place money. for financial aid, but also for what else you need to do in the financial plan. So that's why at Bridgewise College Planning, we do that holistic. We look at everything. We don't just look at here's how much you need to save each month for debt or for college, which is a valuable thing to have, right? That's like that if that's all we did, people would still pay us some money to do that, right?
Right.
But we're looking at the debt. We're looking at how much you're putting into retirement. We're looking at how, if you're on track for what you want out of retirement, we're looking at all of those different facets in the family's financial life to make sure everything is coordinated to make the entire financial plan work, not just the college piece separately from the retirement piece, separately from you're trying to dig out of the debt or whatever else it is people are going through.
Yeah, that's something. Well, two things. I definitely want to touch on that. But okay, so I'm already in the 529, right?
Yes.
Um, and it sounds like it's a good way to save money, right? Like it's better, like you said, better than not saving money. But what do you think is like the better opportunity than the five? Like, or okay, I've been invested in the 529 for both kids for 12 years for one and 10 years for the other. If I Is there somewhere I can move that without taking that big tax hit and like have it be somewhere where it's a better position? And
Yeah.
should I be doing that like right now, as soon as possible?
Yeah, so the 529s are a tough one because the last 12 years you've been invested have been some of the best in the market's history. So while you might not have kept up with the market, you've grown quite a bit in that fund,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
that's a great thing. That means more money than what you put in is going to be available for your kids' college, right? Still some risk there. It could drop still, but most of the time we're going to leave that money in the 529 because we can't undo that decision. And now we have a huge penalty for getting out, right?
Right.
Question then is the penalty for getting out worth changing the investment and getting trying to get more financial aid? And that's different for each individual family, right? So if a family makes a $500,000 a year, they might have a different answer than a family that makes $50,000 a year, right? So it depends on a lot more factors. So here on a podcast, I can't give you the advice. That's why we do one-on-one free consultations. We call them college readiness breakthrough sessions. And any of the listeners can visit bridgewisecp.com and take advantage of that, just so we can look at those individual situations and see if there is opportunity to make changes. And that's where we have a family we just signed on about 8 months ago, actually, who came in for one of those sessions. They had saved in a 529, but not nearly enough for what their kids' college is going to cost. But they were paying out on a monthly basis about 80, I'm sorry, a yearly, about 80 grand a year in debt payments. And that's they had a lot of savings for retirement. They had some other things going on. Through our process, we were able to restructure their debt payments, and now on a monthly basis, they're saving 5 grand a month. That without changing what they spend, without changing how much gas is in the car, or what their lifestyle is, or how much they eat out, or they just took a ridiculous trip down to Disney World that they love to do every year. Still, like without changing any of the spending, we just restructured their family's financials. So now when we're looking at their late stage, I think that theirs is a senior and a sophomore. They're going to be able to pay for their kids' college though because of that. And that's just a huge thing that we're able to do for a lot of families. They were in an exceptional amount of debt. So hopefully you and your listeners aren't in that debt because you've been helping them with finances and helping them people who tend to make better financial decisions. But that's a lot of what we look at is how do we restructure things to make sure it works for each individual situation. But that all started for them at that free college readiness breakthrough session.
Yeah. Hey, fellas, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely need to set one of these up. I'm definitely gonna get on one of these calls and get some stuff broken down for me because I got two things on my mind right now. It's funny when I turned 40, it's like every year from whenever your birthdays start mattering to you, right? Like 4 or 5 or something, right? They matter before then, but you can't remember, so it doesn't matter. But like from 5 to 39, I was always thinking about like what's gonna happen this year. Like I'm 39, this is the best year of my life, whatever, right? Then I hit 40, and automatically I start thinking about 20 years from now, right? I'm not thinking about 41 or 42. I'm like, okay, 65, 66, right? What am I going to be doing? Am I going to be able to retire and like, not be working anymore or working when I want to work, right? Without feeling the pressure of doing anything like thinking about traveling and doing all the stuff, right? And so my mindset has shifted to what does my retirement look like? So we've been being a little bit more aggressive. We had always kind of been, but a little bit more aggressive on planning for retirement. And then
Hmm.
we got these kids now that want to go to college. So what I'm sure this happens for a lot of people. how do I still make sure I maximize my retirement without like not showing up for my kids' college? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like what advice I guess would you say for a dad that wants to be present for his kids now as well as setting them up for the future
hmm
without sacrificing their own retirement for their kids' education?
Yeah. So there's a saying out there, Rod, that they say you can't borrow money for retirement, but you can borrow money for college, right?
Okay.
So you need to save for your retirement first is the traditional wisdom that we hear from a lot of the financial world. I think it's a lot of crap because if you borrow money for your kids' college, how are you going to save more money for retirement? Right? So if you look at the Parent Plus loans or private college loans, whichever route you go, for every 100,000 that you need to spend on college, you're looking at about a $1,200 monthly payment. So if we need 200,000 just to send the kids to the most basic state university and we do that through debt, well, that's $2,400 a month that you have going out in loan payments. That you're not going to save for retirement if you have $2,400 a month
Yeah.
going out in loan payments, right?
Right. Right.
And that's where I have a family who they sent one kid to University of Michigan in Dearborn, so not the main campus, not a very expensive school. Their other son went to Michigan State. They met me, a family of ours referred them to us because they said, you need some help. They did the college loan route and they spent the 529 money first and they did what they could out of pocket. But when they finished college, they had $2,300 per month was going out to those student loans for their kids' college education. This is one of the weird things to wrap your mind around because we hear about the student loan problem here in America all the time. And we always think of like the 25 and 30-year-olds that are trying to dig out of debt. Over 65 is the leading growth category of student loan debt. And it's not because they're going to college, it's because their kids went to college when they were in their 50s and they still have that debt. And that's where, if you look at the financial aid formulas, when your daughter goes off to college, her freshman year, she can only borrow $5,500 in her name. Everything else is based on mom and dad. Everything else is mom and dad's debt. So maybe you could co-sign, maybe you can do some other things where she's on it and you're on it, but nobody's going to loan money. No offense to your daughter. Nobody's going to loan money to her when she's 18-year-old and doesn't have a full-time job. So the only loan she can really get are through the federal government. And those loans are very limited for an undergraduate degree. And now with the new legislation, they're somewhat limited for advanced degrees as well. So that's really one of the interesting things that ends up happening is so once the family that had that debt were able to meet with them. Luckily, they had high income. I think they were at 400 or 450,000 a year, somewhere in that ballpark. So those higher income families, they can afford that 2,300 a month. It's not good, and it's definitely not good for their retirement, but they can actually make the payment. For most middle class families or working class families, they can't make that payment. So what ends
Mhm.
up happening, and this is what the good planning prevents, is you don't want to send your first daughter off, get halfway through, and then all of a sudden you can't even borrow more money to send her back to that third year of college. Because then you're having a tough conversation with her, and that's either you or your wife telling her she's coming home from college after she enjoyed the first 2 years, got great grades, did everything she was supposed to do, or you're having to figure out something else, and you have to talk to the second daughter, right?
Right.
And that's where for a lot of teenagers, their main concern on collecting or going off to college, they've been listening, is we don't want mom and dad to go broke financially if I go off to college. The second thing I hear from the kids is I need to go to a less expensive university so that my little sibling still has some money left from mom and dad. And what's interesting though is for most middle class families, looking at those Ivy League schools or those top tier schools, the most expensive private universities, and even some of the better public universities, sometimes have the best financial aid packages for them. Right. So if we have somebody that makes, $120,000 a year as far as income that they're showing, for most of them, they can go to a $90,000 a year school for cheaper than they can a 35,000 state school because of the financial aid that's available at the $90,000 university. So a lot of those universities, knowing the financial aid formulas is a very important part of that financial aid process. And that's where most financial planners don't even know I got a CFP degree, right? I got the designation, did the 6 master's level classes, took the 6 hour test, did the whole thing, right? Had about 20 minutes talking about college. They didn't address the financial aid formulas at all. So most professional financial planners don't know how that works. You can do some reading online. You can try to be the Google expert or Chat GPT it, but you're going to get all sorts of misinformation out there. And that's why most people want to work with somebody who has the education, has the training, and has the experience in that area.
Yeah, I'll be completely honest. You're the first person that I've talked to that's a CFP that has given me like you already in this. What are we talking? 30 minutes. You're giving me more than my financial advisor has told me about college planning in the last 10 years. You know what I mean? It's just been like, okay, we'll do 529, put some money away. You got extra money, put it away, custodial account, like little stuff just like to save money, but not really an idea of like, okay, this is even in this, a breakdown of how things are going to be affected once we get to that point. Like I had no idea. Like I'll be completely. I know it's going to cost me a lot of money. I know that it's butting up against my retirement, and I know that I'm nervous, and that's really all I know. And then like he's like, okay, just whenever you can, put money away, put money away, put
Right.
money away, and then let it grow and don't touch it and all that kind of stuff. But there's no real like information beyond that, right? And so I would say for myself, this is almost mind shift type stuff, right?
Mhm.
Like because I have been thinking about it one way, but now I'm kind of as I talk to you, and like I say, even in this short period of time, I'm realizing I've got to completely change what I'm thinking in order
Mhm.
for it to work. Because not only for my first daughter, but I had a second one that wants to be a doc. She wants to be a pediatrician. Granted,
Ooh.
she's 10 and she may change her mind, right? But before being a pediatrician, she wanted to be a veterinarian, right? And so it's not like she was trying to save me money by being a veterinarian. It's going to cost
At
about
least
the
a
same.
pediatrician will make more money though.
Yeah, right. So like she's not saving me money at all. So I know that that's gonna come even if she changes her mind and does something else, right? Because they both have a bunch of interests. My youngest, she hasn't decided on school. She does want to be a pediatrician, but she's also very, very much into acting and art, and so she may want to go to an art school or a film school. That's not going to be cheap either. So so I'm starting to think, okay, I need to talk to somebody who has the expertise in this particular field. But I mentioned mind shift. Do you find that that's something that has to happen often, or are there like a common is there like common mind shifts you see between like the people who are maybe struggling to try to figure it out and those who are now thriving and preparing and even providing that college experience for the children?
Yeah. So the mindset shift is usually when the biggest thing that you have to realize is the financial world's out there to make money, right? I make money directly from our clients who they pay us a fee. That's the only money that we make when we're working with families for that college financial plan. And that just creates a huge difference in how we do things, right? So now we're working in your best interest. We're not working for a financial company. We're not working for a brokerage company. We're not working for a bank or a college or the government. We're only working for those families we serve. So that's a big difference, but that mindset shift, the hardest part to get around is you're at where you're at and you're having the feelings you're having is because you've done the things you've always done, right?
Mm,
So if you keep doing the things you're always doing, you're going to have the same feeling a couple years from now, right? Because what you've always done has not solved the problem that you're concerned with, right? So you absolutely have to do something different. You are going to have to make different financial decisions that you've never made before, right? To make that happen, right? So there's a number of different examples of what that is for different individual client situations, but they all come down to what you're doing might not be working 100% for you. Right. And that's where most financial advisors, with the advice they're giving, and they're usually good people and they're doing the best they can in the system they work in, but they're compensated and their companies make money with the more assets that are on deposit with them, right? If that's their business model, they have a financial interest in you never spending more money. right? With you not having the money go out the door. They like that the money's locked up for retirement. So you think of people who have a regular salary employee or hourly employee, they make it super easy to save for retirement. You can just click a button on the computer, save more money in the K, right? Why do they do that when they could do the same thing for a 529 if they really wanted to, right? Well, the difference, the 401k, they're going to have that for the next 40 years, right? Because Rod, when do you plan to spend your last retirement dollar?
The day that I die. Right.
Yeah. But you don't know when that is. So you're never going to spend your last retirement dollar, right?
Right. Right.
The 529, they only have that money for 15 years, right? So when we look at the differences there, let's say they make 1% on both of those, they're going to make a boatload more money by you allocating more money to retirement
Mm.
instead of allocating it towards college. Now, here's the real kicker. So sorry for pissing you off and all your listeners. Who makes money when you borrow money
The bank, right?
for college or for a car or whatever else? It's the banks, right?
Yeah.
Is that the same financial company that's telling you to invest all the money for retirement too? JP Morgan Chase, Bank of
Yeah.
America, Merrill Lynch, all of the different companies, they loan out money and they invest money, right? They are winning on both sides of this equation. So why would they put out publications? Why would they put out information of how to do things a better way, right? So that's why we love just working for our clients, not working for the banks, not working for the brokerage companies, so that we can give advice that's in their best interest. And in most cases, it's showing clear paths of how do we get out of the debt? How do we make sure we minimize that debt? And then how do we make sure that the entire financial spending plan makes sense, right? So if your financial planner hasn't built into your conversations how you're going to pay for college, how you're going to pay for your next car, how you're going to handle the next emergency, they're probably not actually doing financial planning, right? They're just taking the money you gave them and investing it for the future. So that's a big part of it is just being able to give advice in somebody's best interest and making sure that they're doing the very best things for themselves.
Okay. Okay. So when I set up my consultation call, obviously I'm interested in the
Sure.
college planning piece of it, but you guys will also help me with the other part of it, right? The retirement part of it and how I can make sure that I can maximize both, right? Because
Yeah.
I want to. This is me and my wife's goal, and we work really hard and make a bunch of money to do this. Is that once our girls, both girls, are off to college, wherever they may end up, we want to be nomads to an extent, right? We want to have a place. We want to downsize from where we are right now because we won't need 5 bedrooms in Southern
Sure.
California, which is entirely too expensive right now. Because it'll be just the two of us. So we'll downsize, we find a place, and we live 6 months there, or somehow break it up 6 months in the US, and then we travel the world the other time. It may not be 6 and 6, but we get to travel a good amount of time
Yeah.
because that's something that we love doing. But obviously, in order to do that and not have to report to somebody from 9 to 5, got to have a pretty good little setup going. So both things are important, right? And hearing you say that, the college loan numbers for people over 65 are huge. I don't
Mhm.
want that. I don't want, as much as I want to provide for my family, and that is my goal and my sole purpose of being here is to provide and protect and all the things, right? When I'm 65 or 55, shoot, 50, I don't want to go back into debt because my kids are going to school, right? Like I do want them to go to school and I want them to have the opportunities and be doctors and whatever they want to be. But I don't want that to mean that I am unable to live a life that I've worked my whole life to get to.
Well, and that's where our process specifically is designed to talk through all of those other things, right? So we're talking to you about so in our process that we do when we're doing a college plan for a client is much deeper questions than you've probably discussed with anybody other than your spouse. So we're asking if you had $50 million, what would you do different, right? How would you want life to be? You want to be nomads, right? You want to have a home base still. Those are the kind of things that come out with a question like that. But then we get even deeper. We say, well, what if you only had 5 or 10 years left to live? What would you want to make sure happens, right?
Mhm.
What would you do with your daughters if you only had 5 or 10 years left, but your wife and your daughters were going to live longer, right? How does that affect you? And then what if you died tomorrow? What do you miss out on in the future that changes because you're not able to accomplish it, because you're not able to complete it, all of those different things. So we're getting into really deep questions with our clients because it's the right way to do financial planning is to build the life that you want to build is the only way I think is the right way to do financial planning. So do we try to put it in a better fund or a better investment that gets a little bit more return than the other investment that you have? Yeah, that's part of financial planning too. We're experts at that, but it's not the crux of financial planning, right? That's about 15% of your financial success is which investments you choose. But that's where most financial planners focus.
Mm-hmm.
60% of your financial success is just how much money you can set aside on a regular basis. Most people, each paycheck or each month, how much money can you set aside without spending it? That's 60% of your financial success. So that's where we focus most of our time at the beginning. And then we expand that to be all the other areas to make sure everything's going efficiently. So that's good.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, so if someone and I'm curious, just I'm always wanting to know time, right? Because
Yep.
time is such an important thing. If when I set up a consultation call, what is that? Is that normally like an hour call, or how does that work?
Yeah, we set them up for an hour. If somebody has a lot of questions, it might be an hour and 15. But people who set up those free college readiness breakthrough sessions, only about 3 in 10 of those people will ever get the opportunity to work with us at Bridgewise College Planning. We're very selective. Rod, you probably did your homework and looked at our company before you had us
Mhm.
on the podcast and everything like that. We have all 5-star reviews except for one everywhere you can look. And the reason for that and the reason I have a good life and don't have people complaining about my business every day is because we're highly selective of who we sign on. So we only sign on families who we're going to have a major impact on that we can really help. Right. So if we can't help your family, Rod, if you or one of your listeners comes in, we're very upfront about that. We'll give you a couple tips of maybe 1 or 2 things you could do differently, send you some resources that you can probably handle things on your own. But for those families that we can have a major impact on, we are a fee-based company. We work with you and make sure that that fee works for your family. And then we do that work on behalf of your family. And it's depending on how much help your family needs on the college side of helping the student. Because your daughters are about to start selecting classes that are going to go on their resume for college, right?
Yeah.
They should be exploring different universities. If she's thinking Ivy League, well, next time you're on an East Coast trip, you need to be visiting some with her, right?
Right.
Those are things that need to be happening, freshman, sophomore year of high school that you can't go back once it's junior and senior year. So most people who do well in this process take advantage early, take action, and starts with that college readiness breakthrough session.
Okay. Yeah. That's where I need to start and kind of get an idea, and hopefully I qualify to work with you. But I like that you're selective though, because that to me adds another level of value to it, right? Because you can definitely just take everybody on as a client and take their money, and it may or may not work out for them, right? Like you're going to get some mixed reviews on, it didn't change things drastically for us, but you guys are being selective and choosing the clients that you want to work with and the clients you can truly help. That says a lot about you and the business that you do. So kudos to you, right?
Well, and it comes from we get a lot of referrals from our families that love working with us and want their friends to succeed in the process as well. And that helps us obviously a ton. But even if we never signed on a new client, we've grown our business and we've grown our success because of our clients
Mhm.
to a place where we don't have to sign on the next client to make sure my family's taken care of financially, make sure all of our employees' families are taken care of financially. Do we want to grow? Yeah, absolutely. Do we want some more clients? Wonderful. But we don't we're in a really nice spot where we just want an easy life. We want a
Yeah.
great business, a successful business that has really happy clients. So yeah, we're usually focused on what's best for each individual client. And that comes down to should they pay our fee or not, right? What is best for that family? So if we're not seeing an 8 times, 10 times multiple on the fee we're going to charge, we're not going to sign you on as a client.
Right. Because I'm assuming then you're saying, okay, we can't get you the 8 to 10, and that money that you would pay the fee for us, you're probably better off saving that or putting that somewhere else versus paying. Is
Yeah,
that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. So, if somebody's set up really well already, why would we charge them, a
Yeah.
few $1,000s to work with us, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
they're
No,
not
that
going to
makes
get
perfect
benefit
sense.
from it. So
Makes perfect sense.
that, people will be pissed off if you do that. And then we get negative reviews, and then I have to deal with grumpy people, and I don't want to deal with grumpy people.
Yeah. None of us do, man. None of us do. I try to avoid it as much as I can. All right, so we talked about a lot of stuff, but I'm trying something different with the podcast,
Yeah.
and I haven't done this before, but I found it's kind of a fun way to kind of get everything kind of tied together. So I got some rapid fire questions
Yeah. Let's hear.
that to kind of shoot at you. Some of them silly, some of them will kind of work with what we've talked about, and then hopefully some of them give us some more insight into the topic at hand. But the first one, this is kind of a silly one: college savings or a new truck. What should I be doing here?
You can do both. Put them both in the financial plan and make them happen.
Ah, I like that. New truck for me. All right, cool, cool. All right,
But
what's
hold on.
one
I'm going to interrupt your rapid fire, but the new truck might mean you work an extra year and you don't get to be a nomad as soon.
no new truck then. Got it. Got it. I got some places on my vision board I got to get to sooner than later. Me and my wife were just talking about that, and it's like people wait till retirement to go travel because we travel. Actually, they're in. My wife and daughters are in Venice right now as we speak.
Nice.
And then they'll be in Paris for the rest of the week. So we travel quite a bit. I couldn't make the trip because I had some work responsibilities. I couldn't, yeah, whatever. Anyway, which is why I got to retire. But we talk about like the way that you travel. We're 40 now, in our 40s, 42. The way that we travel now versus the way that we travel when we're 21, and in the way that we'll travel when we're 60 are going to be very different. So we don't want to wait until we're 60 to start traveling. And then all we want to do is stay in the room and, order room service. Like we want to go out and explore the city. We want to be able to go, like when you travel and you go to Europe and places like that, there's a whole lot of walking involved. Right.
Hmm.
I want to be walking, 10 miles a day when I'm 65 in a location. Right. I'd rather do that now and be able to experience everything. And then when I go back and I'm 60, right, I know all the spots that I want to hit and I can just hit those spots. Right.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah, I
had a
don't want,
friend, Rod, just on that note, went to, it was a cruise to Antarctica, and he said, don't do the cruise to Antarctica. It's not worth it. Because all you do is you get off, you see penguins every day, and then you get back on the boat, you have a nice dinner, and that's pretty much it. And they're
yeah.
like different kind of penguins each day, but they all look the same, right? So he says, don't do the Antarctica cruise. But he had an older couple that was at their dinner table. They had assigned dinner
Hmm.
times and everything. So an older couple was at their dinner reservation. He noticed that they weren't on the hike one day. And the older couple said, they asked, they were having some wine, and he asked them, well, why weren't you guys on the excursion today? And they said, we should have done this 20 years ago,
Hmm.
because 20 years ago, we didn't know we had the money, so we couldn't do a trip like this. But now that we're 80, we know we have the money, but we saw the elevation change on that hike, and we didn't think we could make it up the hill. And that's why I love doing financial planning, is so you can choose if you want to have the truck or if you want the vacation to Venice or pay for your kids' college education. But we're balancing all of those different financial priorities to be what you want your life to be built with, right?
Yeah.
So that's the best thing I love to be able to do for clients, is give them the permission slip to do more fun stuff early in life. Like that's what I'm passionate about, right?
Yeah.
I love traveling with my family. We were in Europe for 6 weeks a couple summers ago. We did an East Coast road trip. We got to stay on campus at West Point, like all sorts of really cool stuff we've done throughout our travels. We're in the Southwest this summer. All the different things that you can do. It's just amazing. And that's where, if the financial plan is built to do those things you want to do, it makes a huge difference. So yeah, for all your listeners, that starts by booking that college readiness session. That's at bridgewisecp.com, bridgewisecp.com. But Rod, I want to hear your other questions.
Yeah. Let's do it. All right. So what's one what did I say this? What's one money lesson you wish every dad knew?
One money lesson I wish every dad knew:
Yeah.
don't make up for lack of time with spending more money. Make the time with the kids. So I see a lot of, especially when you have two working spouses,
Hmm.
who want to make up for that and make every single second you have with your kids needs to be like $100. You know what I mean? Like you have to go out, you have to have fun with them. You can spend the money and everything like that. They care about the quality time. Just spend the time with them. It doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive. I'd rather you work a little bit less, spend more time with the kids, than work a little bit more and have more money to spend when you're with your kids. You know what I mean?
I like that. Yeah, yeah. I definitely see that being a thing, especially now that we have the majority of the households are two parents working, right? That means there's less of that available time, and we are definitely filling that time with things instead of our presence, right?
Yep. Yeah. So it's an offshoot of it's okay to tell your kid no when they want to spend money on something.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just to be bored together, right?
Right.
Okay. Now you may private school or state school? And then the second part of that is which one is more financially dangerous?
It depends on what field you're going into and what the purpose of college is for your family. So, most of the time, I'm going to lean towards the more private schools, but that's my mentality with my children. The reason is the connections they're going to make. So,
Mm,
financial success is not the only measure of how good you did as a father, right? So, I want to start there. But it is a measure, right? It does matter if your kids are, mess up in life and they work a mediocre job their whole life, that doesn't reflect well, right? So when we look at that, the connections that you can make, they found that this is really interesting, Rod. Number one indicator of how much money person is going to make in their lifetime is not how much money mom and dad make or what lifestyle they grew up in. It's the lifestyle of their closest few friends' parents.
mm.
So
Yeah, I've seen that before.
So
Yeah.
who those connections are is very important. So I talk to my kids all the time, and I'm sure you do the same, is it's very important who you're choosing as your kids' friends, right? Who their parents are, because they're going to be going over to their houses. They're going to see how they live, right? So if they're going over to a friend who got a cell phone too early, who's on video games all the time, and these aren't all bad things, but if it's overdone,
Yeah.
that's not the image that we want for our kids. That's not the expectation we have for our kids, right? They're going over to the family who they see them busting their butt, but then spending quality time with their kids. That's the family I want my kids visiting, right? So, who we pick out as those friends, what kind of language they use, what kind of expectations they have for their kids. We want families hanging out with our kids that have high expectations for children. So, yeah, that's a big deal.
All right. Let's jump off of finance for a second. Let's
Yeah,
just
love it.
get into fatherhood. What would you say is your dad superpower?
Dad's superpower.
Yeah.
Time. It's back to the same answer I just gave. There's nothing like quality time, especially when they're young. So if you have somebody with younger kids, the time you put in before age 5, it pays off dividends for more years, right? So if we can put in as much time as we can early. So I have a thing ever since my kids were born. I didn't work Fridays, Saturdays. I did work a couple Saturdays. I never worked Fridays though.
Hmm.
Still don't do client meetings on Fridays. That's my time with my family. I'm going to pick them up from school. I drop them off from school every day. That half an hour car ride every morning is so valuable to me because I know I get that talk time with them.
Yeah.
That's what I love to be able to do with my family, is spend that time with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a superpower, and that's one that a lot of us don't consider to be. But the ability to be there and be present is an absolute superpower.
I don't know. Now you got me thinking, Rod.
You got another one?
It might be high expectations, high
Okay.
standards.
Okay.
Um, that might be another part of it. And those go hand in hand, right? You can't have high expectation without the time spent with them to teach
Exactly.
them and to keep growing those expectations, right?
Right. Unless, of course, you want disappointment, right? Like you.
Exactly.
Okay. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Roth IRA or 529 plan?
Roth IRA all day.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that after our
That
conversation
doesn't mean
earlier.
it's the best place for everybody to save for college. I'll put that asterisk. For me, I put money in a Roth IRA every chance I get. I've never put money in a 529.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I'm gonna go back. So would you say, okay, so I have the 529 already.
Oh, you're getting
We
back
also
on the financials, Rod.
I know. Wait, I'm sorry. So we got the 529 already. We also have a Roth.
Yeah.
Should I at this point now just Obviously, the consultation call will give me more clarity, but just on the brief one, should I stop putting money into the 529 and take the money that was put into 529 into the IRA only?
So I won't give you your individual advice, Rod. I will say
Don't.
that I've never had a family who actually understands how the 529 works in the whole system ever put more money into it.
Okay. All right. That's all you had to say. I get it. I get it. All right. All right. Let's go back to fatherhood. What is your favorite dad moment of this year?
Dad moment this year. I have a few. I think I might have recency bias, but we just hiked the Grand Canyon this weekend. So we built up to it. We were in Austin, Texas for a little while and Amarillo, and we did a bunch of hikes. We put the heavy backpacks on. We're carrying extra water on like 2-hour hikes just so we can build up our stamina, so we can build up to a harder hike. And we were planning to do Black Canyon of the Gunnison, which was even harder, but it's burnt right now. So we can't, the whole park's closed. We can't do that one. We were one of the 15 people who were going to get to climb down to the bottom that day, but apparently not this year. And we'll have other plans and we'll have fun. But yeah, we made it halfway down the Grand Canyon with the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old, and had some struggles, but made it through. And that's a really cool thing to do, is just go through those tough times with the kids and be able to train their brain to want that and to push for that. Well, we were doing training loops, and I would ask them, hey, you guys want to do another loop and get stronger and get better? And they're in for it, right? It's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. There's a lot of intangible lessons that are being learned as you guys are doing that and kind of taking on those challenges that I think they are learning without you having to like force the learning on them. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you're trying to teach your kids things and you're telling them stuff or you're showing them stuff and they're like, it's information overload, or maybe they don't understand the context of it. But the lived experiences are those impactful lessons, right? Like they're learning without you having to teach them. They're learning it through the experience themselves.
Yeah. And I'm a big guy. I'm over 300 pounds. I'm out there doing it with them and making it happen. I'm struggling too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. But that vulnerability, right, is endearing. It's like dad is doing it with us, right? And it's hard for him, but he's doing it. So I better get in line and do it too.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things is that hard work, that's the reward, right? So I
Hmm.
coach as well. So I coach both my kids' soccer teams. And it's just Parks and Rec. It's not like a huge deal. But I heard a cool thing. I'm a big Michigan football fan. Heard a
Okay.
thing from Jim Harbaugh where instead of you do a one-on-one drill, right? And usually the loser gets punished, right?
Hmm.
What he did is he changed it, and the winner gets a reward of running another lap.
Mm.
So the winner gets the reward of getting stronger and being better, even better for the next time they do the one-on-ones, right? And
Yeah.
all of a sudden that changes that mentality of being in the weight room is a reward. Being in doing extra laps is the reward. It's not a punishment, right? And just that
Yeah.
mentality that the hard work, that's the payoff, right? That's the good thing that's going to build you for the future.
Yeah. I love that. I love that mindset. And I love that kind of shift in the way that we go about things. All right. I got a couple more.
Yeah.
My daughters play sports. They both play softball. My oldest is gonna run track and play flag probably this year too.
Okay, cool.
So very busy. But let's say, right? Because I know I got a bunch of sports dads that are in my inner circle.
Mhm.
Let's say the kid gets a full ride, right? We've been planning for college, putting money away. They get a full ride to college. What should we do with the money now? What do you say we should probably do with it?
Yep. So I'm going to defer to it's an individual thing again. So what could you do with the money that was in the 529? Probably 8 times out of 10, we're going to spend that on your grandkids' college.
Okay, you can transfer it, right? Okay, all right. So we
Sometimes
just
it'll go to a niece and nephew. Every once in a while, we'll do. There's very specific rules that you can convert it into a Roth in certain cases. But most of the time, the best tax use of that is just leave it for the grandkids or even the great grandkids. So most people that have the extra money to save enough in a 529 that's a real question for, they're going to be leaving money to the kids and the grandkids anyways. We might as well do that on a tax efficient basis.
okay. All right, that makes sense. Okay.
But they're probably not going to get a full ride.
Yeah, I know, right? Those are few and far between unless you play football or maybe even basketball, but all the other sports is all partials.
Well, and Title IX helps some with that at the Division I universities, especially. But there's a million other kids trying to get that Division I scholarship.
Exactly.
Yeah, actually, most of our athletes, when we look below the Division I, most of them are getting the more academic scholarship than they're getting because they're good kids. And that's why we love athletics is you have to be disciplined with your time. So I love that they're doing more than one thing. That means they're fitting their homework in. That means they don't have the lazy time that other kids have. And that's a great thing.
Right. Yeah. That's what I love about sports too. Is like you talked about with your sons or with your kids doing the hiking and all that kind of stuff. The intangibles that you get from playing sports. Of course, there's all the physical attributes and all that stuff, but there's so many other things that are learned through
Yeah.
sport that you probably could teach your kids on your own, but there's so many other touch points and opportunities for lessons learned that you aren't skilled enough or disciplined enough to teach. And so I love sports for kids. And they don't have to be the superstar on the team. They don't have to be playing at some elite level somewhere. Just the teamwork, the camaraderie, the discipline, the overcoming obstacles, the failing and not quitting, like all those things go so much further than sports. I think if your kid isn't playing a sport or doing some kind of extracurricular activity, it could be maybe it's an art oriented thing. Like my daughters act as well, and they do plays and they do musicals and all that kind of stuff. And like there's got to be something. They play instruments. Like there's got to be some kind of thing that they learn or are learning and having to overcome that prepares them for a life. Like I said, a life without you later on.
Rod, have you had your daughters read or listen to The Man in the Arena?
No, I haven't. I
So
haven't.
I'd share that with every single team I ever coach, every group of kids I can ever get in front of, just because the expectation is you're going to be bloody and sweaty and dirty and you're going to fail, right?
Yeah.
And it's the man in the arena, the person who's actually doing it, that gets all of the credit. And at least if they succeed greatly, right? And that's such
Right.
a great feeling, but at least they know either victory or defeat. The person on the outside watching them, making fun of them, doesn't know the victory or defeat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the expectation is. My kids will repeat it back to me. They'll say, doers make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing enough stuff, you expect we're not trying to make mistakes, but we're going to, right? And that's the expectation for me as a father is I'm going to make mistakes, but I have to still be there doing it, right? And that's the expectation for my kids is they're going to make mistakes, but we're still going to keep doing, we're still going to keep pushing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's shift back to fatherhood for a second.
Yeah.
If you could, in one word or maybe a few, how would you describe fatherhood?
Amazing.
It is, in fact. Yes, I agree. I agree. Elaborate though. Give us a little bit more on that. I know I asked
Yeah.
for one word, but when you say amazing, I want to know. Like, I want to know a little bit more.
Yeah, so there's certain goals you have in life, and that's where, you want to make a certain amount of money, you want to build a certain life for your family, all those different things, right?
Hmm.
Those get a lot of the things that I set out to do in my career. I've done and have hit those goals, and it feels really good. There is a ton of satisfaction, and it's interesting for me because I get the same thing with my team that I'm training at work too. Is uh, their success that comes from the influence you have is your success, right? So it's not the only way to measure success. Once again, it's not the only thing that matters, but I teach a counselor how to build in the financial part of college, and they go out and do it with the kid and everything works out really good. That's the kid's success, it's the parent's success, it's the counselor's success, and it's my success, right? That feels good for me. That's an amazing feeling. Same thing with the kids though. When they go out and they do the hard thing, when they persevere, when they go out and they fail, like that's my success, right? That's my influence that I had on them that allowed them to go out and do the hard thing, where we got out of a big elevation change we were doing when we were in Austin, and there's a couple guys there with their shirts off, they're sweating all over. Me and my daughter got to the top just a couple minutes before my son and my wife, and she says to them, "Yeah." They go, "Hey, you made it, good job." And she's like, "Yeah, we can do hard things." Like it's just such a rewarding thing to see that influence that come through with them. They're not perfect, there's struggles all the time, but it's amazing to be a father.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. I definitely agree. All right, man. I love that. Those are my rapid fire questions. You crushed it, and I appreciate you playing along and trying something new with me. Now let's bring it home. This is a question I ask all the time, and every time I ask it, I get a little bit of a different answer, but I'm always curious to hear what guys have to say. So let's say we do this thing right, and we've gotten to a point where every father out there is listening to this part of the podcast. What is one thing that you want them to hear?
One thing I want fathers to hear:
Mm-hmm.
put in the time early. There's going to be more work to do. There's going to be more other things you can do with your spouse later. Put the time into the spouse too, but put the time in with the kids. There's no replacement for fathers. If you look at statistics, and I'm sure you've done this with other guests and yourself, Rod, is father being present is one of the hugest things that makes kids successful, right? If you take out single parent household, almost every statistic that anybody wants to measure, whether it's poverty, whether it's education level, whatever it is, jail time, anything you want to measure where we want the situation to be better, having a father present for their kids is one of the best indicators of success. So spend the time with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't add anything to that. That is it, right? And it's interesting. We talk about investing and financial planning, and time is always kind of working in our favor when we talk about that, right? Like the sooner we start, the better. And the same thing goes with your kids. The sooner, the better. Early and often, as much as you can, whenever you have the ability to spend that time with them, because whether you know it or not, right, that 15 minutes may not seem like anything, right? You just being in the room with them, playing that little game, or having that tea party with the imaginary tea that tastes so delicious. It goes so much further than that. And it's super important that you do it. Uh, you know what, Paul? I really appreciate you taking the time with us, and taking this time to share. I know you're traveling right now, but taking the time to kind of share not only your financial expertise but your fatherhood expertise with us is super valuable, and I really appreciate you doing so.
Yeah. Do we have time for one more thing?
Absolutely.
So different advice I've ever gotten. I went to my grandpa, who was a very wise man. He died, maybe a little more, 7 years ago, probably now. But when I first found out we're pregnant, I went to him, as I did often in life, to get advice from him. That's where I learned to travel and go on road trips with the family. I went with him when I was a teenager, right? I asked him, what's your best parenting advice? And it was so different than what I've heard from anybody else. He said, protect your wife from your kids. And I
That's a
thought
good one.
that is so good, because, and I see it now in everyday life, they're going to abuse her. They're going to yell at her. And most women, if not all women, are so giving to their children, right? They're going
Hmm.
to put in the extra time with them. They're going to spend they're going to stay up late preparing their kids' school stuff for the next day, and everything else. Then from the time they're a baby and they're getting up to help them at night to later on, they're going to abuse that time. The kids are going to take advantage of your wife. They're going to mistreat your wife, and don't ever let them do that, right? So it's your job as a father to step in and make sure that they're treating your wife with respect, make sure they're not taking advantage of her, and protect your wife from those kids. I thought it was just such great advice now that I'm living it,
Yeah.
that he gave.
That is really good advice, and I'll say your kids are a little younger than mine, but mine are right on the edge of. I've got tweens, right? I got a teen soon to be, and I find myself having to protect my wife from them all the time, and more so, especially now that my older daughter is about to hit puberty, and she's starting to get a little mouthier, and she knows everything, and she like I can see like I don't know why, but there's like this kind of natural tension between the two of them all the time, and I'm like, listen, man, come here, let me talk to you for a second. Like this is your mother you're talking to right now. Like I hope you understand the sacrifices that this woman is making. I hope you know that that's the woman that you're growing. Like if you were lucky, you can grow up and be that woman. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I hope you just realize that right now as you're rolling your eyes and storming off. But yeah, that's great advice, man. That's something that too you don't hear very often, right? Like you don't hear people say that, and so that the fact that you were given that and that you just shared that is huge. It's huge. I hope guys are taking that and can use that right away, because you don't realize it if you're not in tune with your partner. But kids will take advantage of mom because she is nurturing and she wants to give all of herself, and she's super sacrificial in that way. And she's more emotional than you. And so you don't notice it, but they are kicking her butt, and you got to step in and protect her from them, just like you would protect her from anybody else.
Hmm.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I'm gonna wrap up, but before I do, if guys are wanting to reach out to you, I know you mentioned the website earlier, but if guys want to reach out to you, they want to connect with you, they want to try to figure out if they want to set up a consultation, or they just want to say, "Hey, man, thank you for the episode. Thank you for sharing information." What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. So best way is just to type into Google Bridgewise College Planning or Paul Campo, and that'll come up with our website, bridgewisecp.com. You can click on there for a free consultation. If they just want to send me a message, there's a contact us form somewhere on there. Send me a message. I'll read every single one that you send in. My team will probably see it first, and I'll definitely see it. Happy to help any way that I can for anybody who's listening.
Awesome. Awesome. So, fellas, that'll be in the show notes as well as in the guest profile. So, if you guys are driving or working out or doing whatever you're doing while you're listening to a podcast, take the time, hit the description, the show notes and stuff, and you'll have all that information. If you're on the website, it'll be in the guest profile and have all the information for you. I definitely am going to take advantage of getting consultation. And I think everyone should, whether you're able to or you're blessed enough to work with Paul or not. You should definitely start looking, start getting the information, figuring out where you are right now and what are the best moves for you to make. Because I would hate for you and your family to get to that point and have worked so hard to get there and not be able to take full advantage of the opportunities in front of you. Paul, thank you. Thank you again for joining us. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation, Rod.
Absolutely. All right. Big shout out to Paul for dropping some financial wisdom and fatherhood gold. Fellas, if you've been putting off planning for college or wondering how to provide without sacrificing your future, now is the time to act. Visit bridgewisecp.com, bridgewisecp.com, and book your free college readiness breakthrough session. Whether you end up working with Paul or not, it's a move your future self and your kids will thank you for. And if you got value today, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a fellow father and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, lead with faith, family, finance, and fitness. Peace.